portfolios to take charge of digital services and transformation. We also have 2 new councillors joining the Cabinet. Firstly, Andy Coles will take over the portfolio for finance, and he has a wealth of experience and has been dedicated local councillor for many years. Councillor Nigel Simons will be our new Cabinet member for Waste, Street Scene and the Environment, using its wealth of practical experience and business knowledge. He'll be of great benefit for the role. If you indulge me, Mr Mayor, I won't be very long at all, but I think people want to know who the Cabinet are. I've also appointed 4 Cabinet advisors. Shazia Bashir will help as an advisor on public health, in its particular focus. Councillor Gul Nawaz will take up a role on community cohesion.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. Councillor Murphy had his hand raised with a point.
Councillor Murphy, do you have a point?
Sorry, Mr Mayor. 3 minutes ago you brought to his attention the time was up. If you would make some haste, I don't think you should indulge him anymore.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. It was a minute and a half ago.
I have a couple of paragraphs, Mr Mayor, left. So,
Thank you.
I did ask for your
I'm
indulgence.
watching the time. Thank you.
I've also appointed Councillor Ray Bisbee as Cabinet Advisor for Children in Care, an area he cares passionately about. This builds on Ray's role as Chair of Corporate Parenting. And finally, Councillor John Howard will advise the Cabinet Member for Housing, Culture and Communities. John has been a great community champion for the Hamptons during his time as a councillor and would be advising Councillor Allen. And finally, I would just like to express my gratitude for those who have stepped down, Councillors John Holditch and David Seaton, both of whom retired earlier this month and worked tirelessly over their term in office in their respective areas for which they work. I look forward to working with all the political parties and members in this room, and I welcome political challenge that you will provide from time to time. We may not always agree, but I know we share one common goal: to improve Peterborough for the good of everyone who lives and works here. It's my intention to have an open-door approach to all members across the whole of the Council, with a focus on priorities and providing the critical services that our residents need and rely upon. Together, we can continue to ensure that Peterborough is a place that offers growth, prosperity and opportunity for everyone. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you. I made an extension of your time, Councillor Fitzgerald, because of the list you were going through at the time. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Allen, would you like to second the recommendations, either speak now or reserve your right to speak later in the debate?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and indeed I will speak now. Can I just check with you that you did say that the need to stand had been waived for this evening's meeting, is that correct?
Correct, yes, thank you.
Okay, fine. I'll remain seated if you don't mind. Sit nearer to the microphone, save me bending my neck. I fully endorse the Leaders programme. I echo and fully support it. It's an excellent programme. I support the recommendations. The vision is energetic. There's a passion and there's lots of great aspirations there. One of the points that I think the leader didn't actually say in words, but was embraced in the item that he was discussing, was the fact that we do have a commitment to turning Peterborough into a city of culture, not only as a day-to-day activity of our efforts, but also to go for a City of Culture bid. And I think that we're both committed to that with our colleagues. So I'm very happy to support the Leaders programme for the forthcoming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Can I call on any group leaders? I've extended your time permitted for this to 5 minutes. Councillor Shaz Nawaz.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and first and foremost I must take the opportunity to congratulate you on becoming Mayor, and I wish you all the best. See, Wayne, if you'd allowed me to write your speech, not only would you have stuck to time, but just now you've said a lot, but you've said nothing. So at least it would have been a more meaningful speech. My first observation with your cabinet, with respect, is it's very pale, stale and male. You've only got 2 lovely women who I have a lot of admiration for, but I'd like to see some gender balance, better gender balance would have been a good thing. My second bugbear, which should come as no surprise to you, Leader, is that diversity seems to be something that you've forgotten about. You have some new councillors and existing councillors from a diverse background, but they seem to have been missed from your main cabinet, which is disappointing to say the least, especially that you seem to want to champion diversity and inclusivity. You talk about 21 years. So from 21 years ago, if you look at last year, we were on the verge of bankruptcy. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about the past, but when I think about Empower, St. Michael's Gate, Rhubarb Bridge, Hilton, a lack of housing, low wage economy, North West Gate, which was a dream that I heard about when I was a teenager, and 25 odd years on, you've still failed to make that happen. Health inequality, wealth inequality, income inequality, and yet you stand up and attempt to tell us that the Conservatives are doing a fantastic job. Well, I can tell you, you're not. You've clearly neglected certain areas, especially the area that I represent. You promised £7.5 million, you fooled people, and you failed to deliver. That pretty much sums up how you will most probably run this particular council. And Councillor Steve Allen, I'm pleased you mentioned the City of Culture, but I'm extremely disappointed that we had a particular cabinet role for that, which is now been merged into a different role, so that possibly suggests that the leader isn't as committed to that particular badge as perhaps you suggest. So I'm disappointed with that. I was pleased to hear you were talking about free bulky waste collections, which we have asked for in the past and which you reintroduced. So I'll be holding you to account on that. Clearly, you talk about the environment, and 2 years ago I stood here and said the Labour group would put forward a motion on the climate change, and that was brought forward through the Greens and yourself, which we supported. And I'd have liked, really, Leader, to have seen a dedicated cabinet role, especially on the environment, to show that you are committed and you're serious about the challenges that this city and this country faces. Absolutely delighted that we have a new Metro Mayor who's going to help us move things forward. So that's one thing that you and I do agree on, because I know Nick Johnson is very committed to improving housing, improving education, improving skills. So you will have a good person there to work with, and we will, of course, support you the best that we can. So I would like to see more council-owned homes. We've heard about the housing revenue account. We've brought motions forward in prior years in relation to that, Wayne. So less talking, more action on that would be good. We have a low-wage economy. I'd like us to upskill people and move away from a low-wage economy so we can create opportunity for more people. Education, that's a sore point for most of us in this particular room. And being rock bottom, bumbling at the bottom, Wayne, is not good enough. So I hope that's something that you are going to address and take seriously, so that we can invest in future generations. And most importantly, I hope you are going to reach out and work with all sections of the community. I've heard or read some of your comments about Black Lives Matter, about Extinction Rebellion. I'm not going to ponder on that today, Mr. Mayor. I'm just about to finish. Last two sentences. But I hope they were in isolation, and we can put them behind us, and that you will work with all sections of the community. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Fitzgerald on his appointment as Leader of the Council. The owners of Pizza Express will no doubt be grateful, as they can expect a good proportion of his increased allowances to be spent on their premises. But I think we do need to recognise that the elections that have just taken place were really good for the Conservatives across the country, but in Peterborough we still remain a hung council, and I would actually ask the Chief Executive and our officers to actually bear that in mind. And I think a lot of onus is going to be on the Warrington First group to show whether they are what they claim as genuine independents who look at each issue as it comes up, or whether they're going to consistently vote with the Conservatives. I do like to thank Councillor Fitzgerald for giving us advance notification of his Cabinet appointments. It's good to see the Cabinet is a bit smaller, but the number of Cabinet advisors has increased. I congratulate Councillor Coles on taking on the very difficult role of Cabinet Member for Foreign Finance. I hope he'll spend a bit less time than his predecessor on scoring petty political points on Facebook, and I hope that when we actually debate the budget in the council chamber, we'll actually have a debate and not have it closed on us. 20 years of Conservative rule in Peterborough have taken our council to the edge of financial catastrophe, and it was only averted by a large loan coming out of central government. We absolutely recognise that we've got a big problem, and if our Cabinet member adopts a consensual and cross-party approach, then we will welcome it and engage with him. We will welcome the merger of adult social care and health into one Cabinet portfolio. We really need to look at those as aspects of the same thing. Councillor Shaznawaz mentioned the level of attainment in our schools, and I noticed that wasn't mentioned in Councillor Fitzgerald's speech, because urgent action is needed to address that problem. What I'd really like to see from this administration is some greater join-up between the policies they advocate and the priorities and action on the ground. We all know our country is facing a climate emergency. We've all seen we've been hit by a public health emergency. I do think Councillor Fitzgerald did a really good job in his role as Cabinet Member for Health during the pandemic, and he was helped by hard work by our actual officers across the entire authority. But our response to climate change has not been good. The aspiration is great. We've got a policy to get to net zero carbon by 2030. But where is the implementation? We know that transport is our biggest source of carbon emissions, yet we see traffic continuing to grow. We see our waste recycling percentages, once some of the best in the country, now flatlining and falling. When we proposed action on that to encourage composting by reviewing the brown bin charge, we were told it was unaffordable. Yet what are the Conservatives now proposing? To give everybody a free bulky waste collection, as many as they want, as often as they want. And when governments and councils across the country are investing massively in tree planting to tackle climate change, what does our council propose? An extra 400 trees per year. What more do I need to say? It is not the action that we need to have. It's interesting that from April the 1st, public transport is now a combined authority responsibility, and I'm really pleased that Nick Johnson has said that he wants to implement bus franchising as soon as possible. That is a welcome thing, but we need to do much more than that. We need to have a vision for the future to develop a 21st century transport system that gives everybody a realistic alternative to the private car. And I did notice Councillor Fitzgerald said a lot about the embankment. He mentioned there's going to be a master plan. But we're going to have the master plan. We've been promised the master plan for 2 years and it hasn't happened. Loads of deals seem to have been done behind the scenes with the football ground and the university. We needed a master plan 12 months ago. By the time we get it, all of the key decisions will seem to have been taken. So I wish Councillor Fitzgerald well. and I look forward to debating with him some of these important issues as we move out of the era of pandemics into what we hope will be a new, exciting and prosperous future for Peterborough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Almost perfect timing, Councillor Sanford. Can I remind members, though, that there's no need to stand to talk in this meeting because we're in a different environment. The sound is affected by the distance from the mic, so I prefer you remain seated so we can hear everybody clearly. Councillor John Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I remind all councillors what being independent really is? If it's a good idea, it's a good idea. End of. If it's a bad idea, it's a bad idea. End of. It's as simple as that. We choose how we vote. We do not have a whipping system, as my two colleagues will tell you. We often disagree, and there's people in opposition groups that will agree with that. We do sometimes disagree. But the good thing is, if we've got a problem, we don't bring questions and motions to the full council. What we do is go and knock on the door of the leader. Councillor Seresti's door was always open, and he'll tell you I was regular in his office, not to have a cup of tea and a friendly chat or anything like that. Well, it was a part of that as well, but it was because I went to him with problems. That's the man at the time who you go to with the problems. John Holditch was exactly the same. You could go to him with any problem and talk to him man to man and sort it out. And we did do that quite often, as I'm sure John Holditch would clarify. If I get the same response from Councillor Fitzgerald, we as independent councillors will be over the moon. So you can say what you think of us. We're not bothered, because true independents are independent. We can do what we feel is best for this city, and we will do. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Fox. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of the Green Group, I congratulate Councillor Fitzgerald on his appointment to the role of Council Leader, and Councillor Allen on his appointment to the role of Deputy Leader, and all who have been appointed to the Cabinet. We look forward to working with you in the year ahead and wish you every success. The past year has been strange and frustrating, and so many people in the city have experienced personal loss of a level never known before. The vaccination programme has been little short of a miracle, and we're very proud that 2 key vaccination centres are in our ward of Autumn Waterville, at the Showgrounds and at Halls the Chemist, who recently administered their 20,000th vaccine. What an incredible contribution by local business and volunteers from our local communities. As Peterborough opens up again, we look forward to a year of recovery and anticipate the regeneration that will make our city stronger than it was before. During lockdown, residents' interest in the environment around them peaked, and we expect public scrutiny of how we develop our green spaces to be greater than before. The redevelopment of the embankment is already on people's minds. I've always thought of Peterborough as a city by the countryside. Now we must fight to protect our heritage, develop our culture, create more jobs, attract more businesses, and ensure that Peterborough is a safe and pleasant place for people to live and visit. On the Green Party's agenda is the Council's commitment to fighting the climate emergency. We keenly anticipate the development of a food strategy that will ensure that no Peterborough resident goes without access to nutritious food, and the Green Amendment to the budget will ensure that everyone lives in a warm home. We are also passionate about improvements to public transport and encouraging greater use of active travel choices such as walking and cycling. We want Peterborough to be an accessible city where all services, businesses, amenities and environments are fully accessible to everyone, including disabled and older people. We're excited about the new university, which will create highly skilled professionals who will work in the emerging green economy. There could be so much to look forward to as we gingerly begin our lives again in the new normal. Our thanks at this time also extend to Gillian Beasley and her team, including the recently retired Public Health Director Liz Robin, for keeping the Council going over the past municipal year. for the flexibility shown by so many council officers who moved into alternative jobs to keep the city going, and for establishing the hub that has made sure that our residents remained fed, warm, safe and well during this difficult time. If there are easier times ahead, one can only wonder what we might achieve by working together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any further debate from any members? Councillor Cahan. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say congratulations to yourself for taking your seat, and also congratulations to Councillor Fitzgerald. Something I've noted here, myself being a safeguarding lead for a practice, is I'd like to understand the working behind allocating child safeguarding to the Education Scrutiny Committee and separating that from the adult safeguarding. They are two separate entities, but a suggestion would be to bring the child safeguarding remit under the Health Scrutiny Committee alongside adults, simply because of the fact that the parameters of concern are common, the alerts that go with that are common, and already when we look at the state of affairs of education at the moment, there is an incredible workload that you're having to address in the area of education when it comes to children already. So it's an observation and something that I think needs to be taken on board, but would be dealt with in a very consistent and streamlined manner if it was to come underneath the remit of health. Thank you.
Thank you. No other members? I can then call on Councillor Allen. As seconder, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've already spoken in support of the leader's recommendation, so I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will. Let's go to the end, and Councillor Qayyum. So I'm always happy to take questions, as you know, Councillor, and I will get you an explanation in writing as to the rationale or thinking behind the changes within the delegations. And that would be the same for anybody else who's got questions. It would take far too long to do it tonight, and I don't wish to delay members. But if the officers could make a note about Councillor Qayyum's specific question, and always happy to chat it through in person with you as well. Absolutely no problem. I'll also, working backwards like Julie Howell, although I've done it again previously in written form, I would also like to express my thanks to Gillian and all the team, particularly the Democratic Services team, that put the elections on, which was quite a feat to do. They've gone above and beyond with challenges, especially keeping everybody COVID safe at the time. But everybody in the council, I did mention in my speech, but the team here tonight that have been putting all these things together do deserve an extra special mention. So I'd just like to reiterate that. Working backwards again on some of the notes, it would be very easy for me to be glib about some things, but look, John Fox and I get on well, Judy, Steve, I get on with all councillors. But let me tell you, John Fox is not going to do anything I tell him to do, or even ask him to do if he doesn't agree with it. And neither is Judy, and neither will the Mayor, and I don't expect that position to change. And I know John feels quite passionately about when people in this chamber, or room tonight, infer or imply, I don't know which way around it, imply that, you know, somehow he's the whipping boy of the Conservatives. That is entirely not true. And it has been evidenced in the past where individually even, they will vote separate ways. So, you know, I'm never going to expect automatic support. I want it to be freely given, but when it's right to do so. And I wouldn't expect it to do otherwise. But John, Judy, Steve, I know you're the Mayor now, but the door is still open. The Conservatives have an open door. I did say that in my remarks, and that is true. But again, I reiterate, it's the same with any member that wants to talk to me or any of the administration or indeed the Conservative members. On the education point, we're working hard to improve outcomes on education. Most of our schools are outstanding, according to Ofsted. You know, I don't buy into this. We're a dreadful authority. Yes, we have some issues and some problems, but look, don't sit there criticising about education. If you've got the answers, come and share them, because this is for the benefit of our children. Don't sit there gloating, saying, no, you're all getting it wrong. Well, what would you do? So come and tell us. Otherwise, we're going nowhere. Nick, I'm going to give you a guarantee. I've already instructed officers in the sense that I've asked them to do the master plan, and I believe 6 weeks is the timescale, not to complete it, by the way, but to commission it, okay? So one of the first things I've been speaking to Steve Cox and the team about is to get that underway, and I'm told that we should be able to commission that within 6 weeks. In terms of the cost of the administration, I believe overall it's gone down because we have less chairs, but I've linked cabinet advisors close to the cabinet members in the areas that they're working in, so I believe the overall cost has gone down. Now, let's turn to my favourite person in terms of the opposition of the council. I'll start, Shaz, that actually I wouldn't like you writing my speech because they'd be full of nonsense and waffle and complete inaccuracies. So I'm sorry I went over, but you know, it's important stuff, and when time is needed, it is needed. And dealing with your remarks about my remarks, I won't support people who tear down statues and dig up lawns and smash windows. I'm sorry, that doesn't change. And if people want to make political capital out of that, that is actually a dishonest, and it's
Councillor Fitzgerald, I'm afraid there's only 3 minutes for this.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I will close. I'll just say one final point.
You've had 4.5.
One final point, a couple of points then. So 50% of the available females in the Conservative group, right, half of them, 50% of the 4 are in the cabinet, and that's 25% of the cabinet. So I don't understand your mathematics. As for ethnicity and how we choose people, I choose the best person for the job. What colour, race, ethnicity, it doesn't even enter my head. The best person for the job gets the job.
Right,
and to
thank
reply
you.
Otherwise.
Thank you,
very much,
Councillor
Mr.
Fitzgerald.
Mayor.
Sorry, got to wrap this up.
Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation, therefore, is to note the appointments to Cabinet and the Leader scheme of delegation, to note the appointments to the Shareholder Cabinet Subcommittee, and note that the Constitution will be updated to reflect these changes. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
I think that's agreed. Thank you. Before we move on to the next item, Councillor Sanford, I understand you would like to move a motion without notice to suspend standing orders. Would you like to move that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have actually given notice to members of the motion I intend to move and what the reasons for it are. I wish to move suspension of Standing Order 1.1.2, which relates to the business of Annual Council, and Standing Order 19, which relates to motions. And if I'm given leave to suspend the standing orders, the motion I want to move is that Council agrees to delete from the Constitution the changes made by the monitoring officer as a result of the motion brought by Councillor Fitzgerald, returning Standing Order 19 on motions to its original form, and also that Council requests that the issues of how motions are handled and submitted to Council is dealt with at the next meeting of the Constitution and Ethics Committee. And further, I wish to move that the Constitution and Ethics Committee be requested to consider the business that takes place at the annual council with a view to including the Constitution as an item. Now, just briefly want to explain what the reasons for that is. At the moment, and I was quite flabbergasted when I was told this, that I cannot at the council AGM move an amendment to the Constitution because there is no item on the agenda relating to the Constitution. So what that means is that if there were to be a new leader of the council, as we've got here, he could not, even if he wanted to, move changes to to the Constitution. Now, this puts us seriously at variance with other councils. For instance, in Cambridgeshire, only about a week ago, there was a new leader was appointed who immediately moved changes to the county council constitution. Now, and so I actually wanted to bring an amendment to the Constitution, but I can't. Now, the reason I want the changes that were made through the motion at the last council taking out of the Constitution is we didn't have a chance to talk about them. I think we had about 1 minute of debate on them. They are really serious changes to the Constitution. It's really important that we manage the way we submit motions really well, but we need to give proper consideration to how we do that. And so that is why I want this issue to go to the Constitution and Ethics Committee. And it's really ironic when you think about it that, you know, the purpose of the amendment that Councillor Fitzgerald put forward to the Constitution was to ensure that any motions that were put forward were properly considered before they went to full council. Yet the way he forced through changes to the Constitution at the last meeting meant we made changes to the Constitution without even getting a chance to talk about them. So he's contradicting his own arguments. For a number of years on this council, we've had a careful and deliberative process for considering changes to the Constitution. This normally involves issues going to the Constitution and Ethics Committee, who then make recommendations through to full council. Fundamentally, this is a fundamental principle that it should be all councillors at a meeting of full council who get to amend our Constitution, not the monitoring officer and certainly not the leader. The Constitution and Ethics Committee has already been considering how we submit motions to Council. At our next meeting, the Chief Executive was going to bring some proposals, but Councillor Fitzgerald circumvented that process by basically forcing these changes through. And just briefly, in the time I've got left, I just wanted to mention why I'm concerned about the changes that have gone through. It creates a lot of unanswered questions, and it creates a very complicated process. A motion has to be submitted 14 working days, i.e. 3 weeks in advance of the meeting. The motion has to state whether an alternative route could have been used. Well, who's to decide whether there actually is a suitable alternative route? The relevant director's got to write a report if the motion has an impact of more than £100,000. Well, full council doesn't have the power to make executive decisions which affect council expenditure other than by setting the council budget. So it's a fundamental principle that councillors should have a right to put motions to full council. There needs to be a fair and well thought out process whereby that should be done. But it should not be subject to arbitrary and poorly thought out changes that have not been debated or discussed. So I move the suspension of standing orders in order that we can have a proper debate on these important changes to our Constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. And I think Councillor Chesnoaz, would you like to second the motion and either speak now or reserve your right to speak later?
I'll second, Mr. Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Can I call upon any other speakers on this motion to suspend standing orders? Councillor John Fox.
Goes that one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 4 simple questions. I'm sure somebody can answer them. Was this brought before the last full council? Was it voted on? What was the decision, and was it legal? 4 simple questions.
Sorry, Councillor Day. Sorry. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We as the Green Group support suspending Standing Order 1.1.1 1.12, which relates to business of Annual Council and Standing Order 19. As Councillor Sandford's pointed out, currently members cannot move amendments to the Constitution today, as it is not an item of business for Annual Council in our standing orders. Other councils do not have such restrictions. Councillor Fitzgerald's motion from March's meeting was not debated, and Council did not have the chance to understand the impact of these changes. We support the request that the issue of how motions are handled and submitted to Council is dealt with at the next Constitution and Ethics Committee, which is the right place for it to be dealt with a report back at July full Council meeting, and for the Constitution and Ethics Committee to look into the annual Council meeting, including the Constitution as an item. We support removing the current restrictions on motions from the Constitution. We think it would become a really lengthy process, and we've obviously all should all have an opportunity to be able to submit motions. We want to ensure that we establish a principle that Annual Council can, as a matter of course, consider constitutional amendments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Call upon Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We won't be supporting this tonight. However, I do have some sympathy with the view about the Constitution being on the agenda as an item for the AGM. So we will take that forward and have discussions with officers and indeed members of the Constitution and Ethics Committee. But this actually, and by the way, I'm happy to take credit for the motion, but I can tell you it was a group motion. It wasn't my motion. I just was the man presenting it on the day. But I'm happy to support it. So I just want to be perfectly clear, Nick. It's not a personal vendetta against you or anybody else. It was a group decision on the basis that we spend so much time talking about things that we needn't be talking about and not enough time talking about the things we should be talking about. So look, it is not the time tonight. I'll again reiterate, happy to have a conversation with anybody with an interest in this matter, but we were trying to save time talking about stuff we need not talk about, and get on with serious council business. Now, if there's a way to improve that, yes, okay, let's have a discussion, but not tonight. It's been done, as John says, past, done, gone, legal. Let's move forward into the next year and have a conversation about it and look how we handle the whole constitutional issue going forward at the next AGM. Otherwise, we'll just be here again tonight, wasting time when I've already just given you that undertaking.
Right. No other speakers? Didn't see any. No, thank you. Right. Councillor Chasnois, as a seconder, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In fact, I'm a bit disappointed, Wayne, because I gave you credit for coming up with a pretty clever and veering towards crafty motion, but seeing that you've admitted it's not yours, there must be somebody pretty clever in your group, and I'm sure, and I know there are quite a few clever people, by the way, so I mean that in the nicest way possible. Councillor John Fox, you raised some good questions there. I guess it's not my job to kind of answer those questions because you've not asked them to me. But sometimes I guess motions are passed at full council without having full debate, and I think we should all be open to looking back at motions, questions, and saying let's revisit and challenge them, because that helps us make better policy going forward. My bugbear, if I can use that word with that previous motion, is that it's making things more convoluted, more complex, and we're a council which should be at least, and I hope is, in my experience, transparent, open to challenge, accountable, and democratic. Councillor Sandford has very eloquently covered most of the points, and I think that particular motion stops that democratic process, reduces accountability and challenge, and puts the onus on members to do a lot of heavy lifting, and some of it, I agree, they should do, but makes them do a lot of heavy lifting to put forward a motion and then spend more time with officers who are already very busy, and I don't think we should be doing that. We should allow members the opportunity, especially those who perhaps don't have an opportunity to raise issues or motions at full council, to debate those particular issues, and we can all have a good debate and vote on it. So with that in mind, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to close my speech, and I'll be voting for this particular motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nawaz. Councillor Sanford, as the mover of the motion, you may now sum up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I will sum up, and I'll just respond to some of the points that have been made. Councillor John Fox said, was the motion put to full council? Yes, it was, but it wasn't. But councillors didn't have any chance to talk about it. They talked about it extensively in the Conservative group, apparently. But what is the decision-making body of this council? Is it the Conservative group, or is it the full council? Was the motion voted on? Yes, right at the end of the meeting, because we'd run out of time. It was voted through using the party whipping arrangements of the Conservative group. Councillor Fox said, was it legal? Well, I understand that the council's taken external legal advice, and it was legal, but it certainly wasn't in accordance with our constitution, because our constitution says that the monitoring officer can amend our constitution in certain very restricted circumstances, and they did not correspond to the circumstances in this particular motion. And I think I would add one further question. Was it a sensible way of amending our constitution? No, it isn't. We should amend our constitution in a deliberative and sensible way. Now, the question I want to put to Councillor Fitzgerald is, why is he so afraid of it going to the Constitution and Ethics Committee? Well, I'll tell you one of what has been said to me. The reason he didn't want it to go to the Constitution and Ethics Committee was the Conservative Party didn't have a majority on that committee. Well, he's now changed that because he's taken one of our seats on the committee, so he now has a majority. Not only that, he's appointed himself as chairman of the committee. So why is he afraid to this important constitutional issue to go to a committee that he controls and he's the chair of? What we have got here, Mr. Mayor, is an administration that wants to make arbitrary changes to our constitution without giving us, as a full council, a chance to talk about it. So,
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a personal explanation, really, or clarification. I'm not afraid of anything, and I think you heard me say that I'm happy to discuss it at Constitution and Ethics. So maybe you didn't hear that.
Thank you. You're
happy to discuss it after you've already made the changes to the Constitution. In the same way that you're happy to have a master plan for the embankment when you've already made the relevant decisions. Isn't it the saying closing?
Councillor Sanford, please, you should not be going on like this. Thank you. Point of order again, Mr. Fitzgerald.
He's just gave an inaccuracy there in public that some decision has been made about the embankment. That is completely not true. So for members of the public watching, please disregard that. It's a lie. It is not true.
Well, let's see what happens. Anyway, let's return to the Constitution.
Thank you.
You know, you're the chair of the committee. You only want it to go to the committee when the decision has already been made. You know, shouldn't we actually have a chance? We're actually going to see now at the June council meeting what the impact of this is. I think, as Councillor Nawaz indicated, it's going to be very difficult for councillors to put motions to full council. They're going to be bogged down in bureaucratic procedures, but you know, it would be a far more sensible way to actually rescind this very arbitrary decision has been taken, take it to the committee,
and let's have
a proper consideration of it.
Very much there. Right, so I think the motion was to suspend council's standing orders. Is that agreed? No, there's dissent, so I shall pass over to Rachel for a vote.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you. Councillors, we are now voting on the motion from Councillor Sanford to suspend standing orders. All those in favour, please raise your green for card, please. Paulina and Karen will count up. Thank you.
No, I'm not.
Can you keep your cards up just for a moment? Just doing a double check. Thank you. Okay. Against, please. Red cards. Thank you.
I haven't got a card.
Any abstentions? Yellow cards, please. Thank you. Thank you. The result is 28 for, 31 against, and there were no abstentions. Therefore, this motion is defeated. Mr Mayor, this motion has been defeated. Please move on to item 8.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Committee structures for 2021-2022. The report can be found in your agenda packs with a supplementary report in the additional information pack. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to move the recommendations in the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to put those forward for approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Allen, would you like to second the recommendations? Either to speak now or reserve your right for later in the debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the recommendations and reserve my right. Thank you.
Councillor Fitzgerald, I understand you would also like to move an amendment to this recommendation set out in the additional information pack.
That is correct, Mr Mayor. Happy to move that also.
Thank you. And Councillor Allen, would you like to second that amendment and speak now or reserve your right until later?
Yes, I second the recommendation and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call upon any other speakers on either the original recommendation or the amendment? I see no calls. Right, Councillor Allen, a seconder, would you like to exercise your right to speak?
As there's been no further debate, I have nothing to add, and obviously I...
Thank you. And Councillor Fitzgerald, the mover, you may now sum up.
Not wishing to delay proceedings, Mr Mayor, as there are no dissenting voices, everybody seems to be in agreement. Shall we just move on? Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't mean that you found a new occupation, Councillor Fitzgerald, the mover. Thank you. So we will vote on the amendment first in relation to the change to the Health and Wellbeing Board terms of reference and its membership, set out in the additional information pack. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We can now move to the vote on the original recommendation as amended, and it is to appoint the committees listed in the recommendation for 2021-2022 municipal year and agreed terms of reference set out in Appendix 1 and the revised Appendix 2. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 9, political balance and allocation of committee seats. This report can be found in your agenda packs. Further information is included within the additional information packs. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to move the recommendations for this report set out in the additional information pack?
Once again, Mr. Mayor, yes, happy to move.
Thank you. And Councillor Allen, would you like to second the recommendations, either speaking now or reserve your right to speak till later?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to support the recommendation and reserve my right.
Can I call on any other speakers? You all happy to agree to this?
Happy to agree, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Right. Thank you. The recommendation is to note the number of seats on committees and to agree the allocation of seats subject to political balance and not subject to political balance. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agenda item 10, appointments to committees and other authorities. This report can be seen in your agenda packs with more information in the additional information packs. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to move the recommendations in the report?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for asking.
And thank you, Councillor Allen. Would you like to second the recommendations?
Indeed, I second and reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I call upon any other speakers? And in the absence of that, as there, can we agree this then?
Yes, agreed, Mr. Mayor, from our side, yeah.
Beg pardon, was that a disagreement?
It's the mask, I think. No, that is agreement.
Thank you. So that, number 11. Okay, Councillor Fitzgerald has moved the recommendation. You may now sum up.
I'm happy to say I just agree with it, and so does everybody else, apparently.
No, I'm not there. No, it's all right. It's a different print. Thank you. The recommendation is to agree the appointments to committees and other authorities and the appointment of chairs and vice chairs as set out in the report. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that last incident. My print version was different to Fiona's. Agenda item 11, calendar of meetings. The calendar of meetings report can be seen in your agenda pack and in your additional information pack. The recommendation is to approve the calendar of meetings for 2021 and 2022. Is this agreed? Right. Thank you very much. I would just like to close. It was quite remiss of me in my speech to welcome and to thank Councillor Jamil for joining me as Deputy. We've both had a long wait for this position, and I've got utmost respect for Councillor Jamil and thank him for joining my team. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. That is the end of tonight's meeting. Safe journey home.